What advice can you give to teens? If there's any advice that you can possibly share.
15-year-olds typically don't know when they're 15 that people making fun of them has nothing to do with them. Hey, Jason, you fat blah, 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 blah. Well, of course it's about me. They just called me this name, but it's not actually about me.
Jason is a celebrity mental performance and leadership coach, a global keynote speaker on future-proof leadership, a TEDx speaker, an award-winning entrepreneur, and the author of the #1 international best-selling Prison Break. With an extraordinary background ranging from opening for the Wu-Tang Clan to creating a business with NASA, Jason's unique blend of transformational wisdom, storytelling, and humor has helped countless individuals experience more joy and personal growth.
I just brush my teeth every morning. I just go to the gym. I just tell my girlfriend I love her. I just come on this podcast to talk to you guys.
Jason, welcome to the show. The Avenue of the Strongest is a podcast dedicated to exploring the lives and experiences of the most inspiring individuals from around the world. Each episode features interviews with fascinating guests who share their insights and wisdom on a variety of topics including education, impact, motivation, health, and learning. I'm your host, Ania Chowdhury.
And Vlad Suleiman.
Today, we are thrilled to have Jason Goldberg joining us today. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. And I always love hearing my bio because the only person that's really impressed by that is my mother. That's the only person who actually cares. But thank you for humoring her. She'll love it.
No, of course, and thank you for your time. This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning educational publisher serving over 1 million students nationwide. If you're a kindergarten to 8th grade teacher or principal, be sure to check out our supplementary workbooks to get your students ready for standardized state testing. We cover all subjects from kindergarten to 8th grade. Use the coupon code AVENUE for a 25% discount off of all purchase orders. Visit us today at argoprep.com/store. Jason, I want to start off first with your weight loss journey. So I think most people know you for losing over 130 pounds, but I kind of want to start over here. I kind of want to start with a question saying, is it helpful to hear family members or friend say, you need to stop eating, you're getting frays? Let me rephrase that question. Does fat shaming help people lose weight, in your opinion?
It's the most effective thing you could ever do. In fact, shaming in general should be the method that all of us use for transformation. No, I'm kidding. It's terrible. It's the worst thing in the world.
Okay, I was going to say.
No. And the thing is that they're well-meaning when they do it, right? They want what's best for you. But I have a chapter in my book. It's actually called Deep Shame Thrombosis, because we try to motivate ourselves so much by shame, and we think that's effective, but in the long run, it really isn't.
No, I agree with you 100%. So I first of all, I wanted to address that because there's a lot of people who do this consciously and unconsciously, but a lot of people consciously doing it. It's like, well, I have the right, I feel like I need to tell you because I'm so concerned for your health. So I want to get that out of the way. But with that being said, what advice can you give to teens? If there's any advice that you can possibly share, and this is specific. This is not generic advice for people dealing with anxiety or depression. I kind of want to walk you through, if you can go back to your 15-year-old self or someone similar to your situation, what would that advice be? Any advice? What would it be? What would you tell your 15-year-old self that is struggling with their weight journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest struggle, or one of the biggest struggles in being so overweight, and I was 250 pounds when I was 15, right? And this is when kids are really loving and accepting and would never make fun of you because of the way you look. Right. And so the thing for me was that I don't know when I'm 15. 15-year-olds typically don't know when they're 15, that people making fun of them has nothing to do with them. Right? Nothing at all. We take it personal because somebody says to me, hey, Jason, you fat blah, 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 blah. Well, of course it's about me. They just called me this name, but it's not actually about me. This person has their own thing they're dealing with that I can't possibly know. They just want to be accepted. They want to be loved. They want to be approved of. And that's a great way to kind of get people all rallied around one thing so they can connect with each other. It's a connection game. And while that hurts the person who's the target of it, it's actually not about that person. So if I could whisper into my 15-year-old self ear and I can see this guy named Zach, I remember, who would just pick on me all the time for being the fat kid. If my 43-year-old self could go back to my 15-year-old self in that moment and whisper in his ear, hey, just so you know, Zach's really having problems at home with his parents right now. They're going through a divorce. He's not really sure what to do. He doesn't know where he's going to live. Just keep that in mind. Then I would hear the fat name calling, and sure, it would still sting, but there'd be a part of me that would have some compassion and some empathy for what he's going through. So we don't have to know what people are going through. They're going through something, whether they even know it or not. They're going through something.
I love that advice. I think we can all all benefit from that advice. In fact, this kind of reminds me of a story. I was driving, and I really try to have a lot of empathy for people. And whenever someone will piss me off, I always try to immediately think, you know, perhaps there's something wrong. Something, maybe they're having a difficult day, and I tone it all the way back down and I calm down. But not yesterday, a couple days ago, for the first time in many years, I nearly broke that. We were driving. There was a truck in front of me, and there was some traffic up ahead. And this car pulls up behind me, and he's just honking. And man, I was, I'm thinking like, what the hell, man? There's a truck in front of me. Like, stop honking. And I was so close. I was so close to rolling down the window and putting up my middle finger, which is against everything. I was so close. And even just the thought of that, I immediately, I think I felt terrible that entire day because I couldn't believe that I was going to do that. But just that advice in general, I think it's very important for us just to have more empathy and always assume that people are having a bad day. If someone's pissing you off, man, just give them the benefit of the doubt. So I think that's very,
Absolutely. Yeah,
But do you
100%.
think,
Yeah, oh, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, Vlad. Go ahead.
i- as you said, if you would whisper to yourself when you was 15 years old, you think even if you would be able to do it, yes, would that Jason would be able to understand it
as a 15-year-old.
as
Yeah,
a 15 years old? Yeah.
it's a great question. So for me, the answer is probably yes, but that's because growing up being, the fat kid being picked on, what I was looking for is the same thing Zach was looking for, was connection, right? And so for
Mm,
me, I found out that if I could make people laugh, I would feel connected to them, right? If I can make them laugh, then they won't make fun of me. They'll be laughing with me instead of at me, right? So that was a way that I got connection. And the other thing was that girls were not into me because I was the fat kid and I wanted connection with girls. And so I realized that if I really listened to them, the other dudes that I was friends with that were like good looking, they didn't listen to the girls. They were just, trying to get whatever they were trying to get. I would sit there and listen to them, and that kind of empathy and compassion, I would get connection with the girls, right? And so for me, I had to develop this humor and this empathy early on just as a coping mechanism for myself. So I think the
mm,
15-year-old version of me would have experienced that. But I think most 15-year-olds, especially nowadays, and I remember I went back to my grad school where I got my MBA, and I did a talk for a group of the students there, and they were first year students. They were 18 years old, 18, 19 years old. And I remember delivering something around mindset, and then at the end there was like question and answer, and one of the guys raised their hands, and full disclosure, I 100% had a judgment of this kid. He had like the blonde Bieber bangs, and he was the quintessential like rich kid in a private college. I'm like, oh, let's see what this idiot's going to say, right? And I feel terrible saying that I was judging him that way. And he raised his hand, and I said, yeah, what's your question? He said, do you feel like people just need to be more introspective so they don't lash out at other people so quickly without having self-awareness of why they're doing it? And I said, yes, that's profoundly brilliant, and I'm actually really hopeful for the future of the world now.
mm,
So I think nowadays it's being pushed down, and what you guys are doing is a great way to continue pushing this forward, is those messages are becoming more prevalent for younger audiences, and so they're learning early on compassion, tolerance, empathy, not
mm,
taking things personally. So I think that's a big thing happening right now, which I'm very happy about.
mm. I have one last question in the weight loss space, which is something very powerful stood out to me when you mentioned on a post, and you often talk about this, but you didn't lose 130 pounds. Rather, you lost 1 pound 130 times. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I was not 300 pounds, but I also, just like millions of other people around the world, have struggled with my weight my entire life. It's always plus 20 pounds, minus 10 pounds, plus 20 pounds, minus 10 pounds. Can you share more about the mindset shift that has helped you achieve this transformation? I love I love the idea of incremental action. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, and this is one of the challenges in the personal growth world, and I tend to be a little bit of a contrarian when it comes to a lot of personal growth, self-help stuff, is that there's a lot that it's, again, all well-meaning, but for me, it hasn't been as effective, is that there's very much a message of you must take massive action to change your life. You must
Mm,
create the impossible. And I'm waking up every morning saying, I just want to be able to do the doable. I just want to be able to like get to my bed at night and say, I'm pretty proud of how the last 16, 12 hours, whatever it was, went. And so for me, there's a challenge where, and I do a talk a lot where it's about how to lose the weight, but it's WAIT, right? To stop procrastinating, to get more into action, so losing the weight. And I was doing a talk in Estonia at one of these Mind Valley events last year, and I put up the Nike slogan on the screen, right? Just do it. Everybody knows the slogan, just do it. And so I asked everybody in the audience, 800, 900 people, what word do you focus on when you see this slogan? And 900 people in unison said, do, right? Do. It's about doing it, right? The challenge is that if I was going to do it, I would have done it by now. Okay.
yeah.
And so it's not the doing that's the problem. It's not when we're not losing the weight, or if we're not doing the thing we want to do in our business or with our relationships or whatever it is. It's not typically a strategy issue. It's a significance issue, meaning we're putting too much significance on the thing we're doing. We've pumped it up so big. It's become life or death. It's become all or
Mm,
nothing. And that leaves us paralyzed. And so what I was inviting the audience to do in that talk was to shift their attention from the word do to the word just, right? Because I just brush my teeth every morning. I just go to the gym. I just tell my girlfriend I love her. I just come on this podcast to talk to you guys. I don't have to have my rosary beads or affirmations or mantras to come and do that. I just do it. And so the just part fits directly into the incremental progress. I don't need to lose 130 pounds. I just need to, for today, focus on the 1 pound that's in front of me.
I love that, and that I kind of want to, before I pass it on to Vlad. That's your JFT productivity, right? Just for today, because
That's it.
I know you were talking about that in a previous interview, and that was something that really stuck with me. That is a great hack, or I wouldn't even call it a hack. That is a great way to take a look at it. Say, just for today, let's focus on what we need to get on today, and not focus on how I'm going to lose 130 pounds. That's mass. It's a big task.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually the perfect transition to my next question. In your last interview, you said if we can all learn how to practice non-identification, we would be happy as shit. So without this identification, we can live with care. As far as I understood, we are no longer bound by fears or illusions of small sense of self. But how do we do that? It sounds extremely difficult, at least for me.
Yeah, well, of course it sounds difficult for everybody because it's very easy to think that who I am and what I think are one and the same. My thoughts don't come out of a machine that's 20 feet away from me. It comes out of here. So if they come out of here, I must be that, right? And so if I believe I'm not enough because a thought tells me I'm not enough, and I believe that I am my thoughts, well, guess what? I'm not enough, right? And that's the end of the story. There's nothing else to do with it. I've identified with that thing. Instead of it being a thought that exists in a localized place in my brain, it has become who I am, right? I was just talking about this to a client today who said, I'm so overwhelmed. She messaged me, I'm so overwhelmed. And I said to her, if you went into the doctor's office and you said, I am in pain, the doctor would say, I don't know how to help you. You're not in pain. What's actually, oh, my knee hurts. Okay, good. Now we've localized the pain. And so I've invited her to say, well, instead of it being that you're overwhelmed, what if it's that your thinking is overwhelmed, right? There is a part of your body, your thinking, let's call it just a body part like your knee. There's a part of your body that is thinking and it is overwhelmed with thoughts. And when I can start seeing that I am not my thoughts, it's much easier to navigate my thoughts. So as a concept, that's what it looks like. But in the real world, and everybody listening to this podcast says, Okay, great. So now I have to become like a Buddhist monk in order to
Right.
not identify, right? So the real kind of practical way that I developed this, and I have one of my clients that I work with was one of the leads in one of the Batman films. And so we were talking about this exact thing, this non-identification thing one day. And this thing occurred to me that I shared with her. And I said, listen, let's just say her name is Lisa. I said, Lisa, imagine that you are the director of the movie Batman, right? And let's say Michael Keaton is the star. He's your star of your movie. To me, the only real Batman is Michael Keaton. So you're
It's
directing the
not.
movie.
It's not Ben Affleck.
It's that's the
No,
worst of who it is. Yeah, that is definitely not Ben Affleck.
I'm just messing
Although
with you.
he crushed it in Air. He crushed it in Air, by the way. Air's amazing. But so imagine you're directing the film and Batman's doing his Batman thing and he's doing a scene and karate chopping and doing all cool stuff. And then you yell cut, end of the scene, and you're talking to the crew and you're getting ready for the next scene. And you look over and you see Batman that's pacing back and forth on the set. He looks super stressed out. And this is the star of your movie. You got to make sure he's okay, right? So you walk up to him, you go, "Hey man, what's going on?" And he goes, "Oh man, I don't know, Lisa. What if I'm not strong enough to beat the Joker? Like what if my tech is not powerful enough? What if the people of Gotham die on my watch and their blood is on my hands? How am I supposed to live with that?" And as the director, you're looking at him like, "What the hell are you talking about? This is a movie. Like, what's going on?" But you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to, stress him out if he's having a manic episode. You don't want to make it worse. So you have two choices in that moment as the director. Number one, you can say, "Okay, Batman, let's figure out how to make your tech stronger so you can protect the people of Gotham and go to sleep at night and be okay." Or the second option is you can help him remember that he's Michael Keaton playing the role of Batman, and that when they yell cut, he can take off the Batman suit and he's no longer that. Now, it doesn't mean that when you realize you're not Batman, you're just playing that role, that it means Batman's problems don't exist. But if I
Right.
believe I am Batman and I relate to my problems that way, it's much harder for me to find solutions than if I create distance from Batman and look at Batman and his problems and say, I wonder how I can help, because I'm not at risk. I'm not Batman. I'm not your thoughts. I'm not
Right.
your problems. So over here as an advisor, as a mentor, I can help you. So for me, the way I do that in a really practical way is that anytime I'm feeling this way, it could be overwhelmed or frustrated or angry or resentful or whatever it is, I'll sit, center myself for just a minute, and I'll say, today I am playing the role of Jason, the overwhelmed entrepreneur. And I can play that role like Academy Award winning level, right? I could do that all day. I'm so good at it.
Right.
And then I sit there and I say, okay, how does it feel right here, right now, without an attachment to that role? I'm not saying get rid of the role. I'm saying if I was playing that role in a movie and then they yelled cut and I realized that I could take off whatever the suit was that Jason, the overwhelmed entrepreneur, was wearing, and I'm just sitting here, right now, how does life feel? Do I feel more stressed? Do I feel more peaceful? How do I feel? And 100 times out of 100, I feel at least a little more peaceful. Sometimes I feel tremendously more peaceful, but at least a little bit more peaceful. And the more peaceful version of me that I can bring to Batman's problems, the better I am at finding the solutions. And so I literally have a bracelet that I made that says, not Batman, to remind myself at all times
Yeah.
that anytime I get caught up in that, I'm Jason playing the role of Batman, but I'm not Batman.
Wow. I love that.
But
I love that.
also, actually, people should understand that, as you said, today you're waking up and you're gonna be playing a role of CEO Jason, whatever Jason, yes. But we also can have several roles in a day. Jason
Yep.
father, Jason CEO, Jason, I don't know, somebody else. So
Yep.
basically, every time you hear cut, you're just changing your roles throughout the day.
That's it. That's exactly right. And it's so interesting because if you don't understand that you're playing a role, it can have massive implications in your life. Like, so imagine that you're in a movie and you were cast as a bank robber, right? A bank robber in a movie is going to kick in the door of the bank and wave a gun in everybody's face and yell at them and scream at them and tell them to get on the ground, give me all your money. If they don't realize that's a role they play and they go home to their family still thinking they're a bank robber, we got problems.
Yeah.
Right? We really got problems. So we have to have that line of demarcation to say which role is actually going to serve me in this particular situation.
So
So
we
then,
are all actors all day long. And where is our real us? When we are going to sleep?
well, that's well. I actually I really wanted to ask that, Jason.
Yeah.
My next question would be then, how does one find their authentic self? That's I feel like that's a big thing, right? And I think that's also a very hard question, question to answer is, how do I know what's authentic to me? Like, for example, I play the role of a CEO, and I've been doing it for so many years. But is that like, how do we find the authenticity without our roles, the prominent roles, kind of muddling that?
Well, yeah. So great question. And who you are will never be a noun. It will never be a
Okay,
title, right? That's not who you are. And so
right.
the only thing you ever are or ever have been is awareness of all the roles, right? The only thing that's
Okay,
never changed since you were born, your body has changed, your thoughts have changed, everything has changed except for one thing, the fact that you're aware of all the things that are
right.
changing. That's literally the only thing that hasn't changed. So if you want to go real, like deep non-duality, the only thing you've ever been is awareness. But again, we live in the world of form. We don't live in the Himalayas and meditate all day. And so if we want to look at authenticity as what it looks like in the real world, my definition of authenticity is that authenticity is what's left over when I stop trying to manage your impression of me, right?
Mm,
When I stop trying to get you
yeah,
guys to think that I'm something, whatever's left
yeah,
over, that's authenticity in that moment.
yeah.
And I
No,
and I want to add one thing. I think who you are, Anayat, you are a producer. So you are a producer of your own movie. So you can appoint yourself to be a CEO. You can be appoint yourself as a father, as a son, and so on. So you're basically throughout the day you are producing your movie.
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. You have
I
access to all the roles.
I want to talk a little bit about your TEDx talk that you did in Raleigh. I absolutely loved your talk on that.
Oh,
I know
thank
you
you.
do a lot of talks, but and I've browsed here and there. I've even watched full on episodes. You're fantastic, by the way.
Thank you,
But
man.
I really like this topic, which is on manufacturing fascination.
Yeah.
I kind of want to spend some time talking about this. It's weird. I have, for some odd reason, maybe it's not an odd reason, but I'm typically fascinated every single day. I'm intensely curious. And that's
Mm.
probably because of the trauma that I've endured as a child. We're not going to get too much into it, but I grew up in a I grew up in a very low income household, very small, tiny apartment, overprotective parents. So I never had the chance to really explore who I was. I never knew any of that. It was their rules, their life. And so when I left the home, when I was fortunate enough to leave and explore, and here I am 9 years later, every day I find myself intensely curious, passionate, fascinating. I enjoy this conversation with you just so much. I'm super
Mm.
grateful. But with that being said, I find oftentimes when I talk to people, uh, many of us find ourselves uninspired. We lack enthusiasm, which something that I find that it's critical to have. So my question for you is, how does number one manufacture fascination, and number two, is it even necessary to manufacture fascination? Why do it in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great couple questions. So to me, fascination, enthusiasm, they kind of go hand in hand. For me, enthusiasm is like my number one state of being. When I'm enthusiastic, nothing can stop me. It doesn't matter
Yeah,
what's going on, nothing can stop me. So I get crap sometimes about the manufacturing fascination because people think I mean that you're supposed to fake it. And that's not at all what I mean. What I
right.
mean is manufacture as in understand that there are key components to fascination that are accessible to you that you can put together to create the experience of fascination. I think fascination is important because it does aid curiosity. They go back and forth with each other. I think
Right.
sometimes, not always, but sometimes the more means you have, the less fascination you have. So the fact that you said you came from a lower income household, you didn't have as many means. And so in order to feel a part of this world and feel like there's a, good reason to continue being of this world, it's important to have an imagination. It's important to be
Yeah.
curious. So sometimes if you have too much means, you don't have a need to be curious or fascinated because you can just go do a new novel thing and that satisfies you. You get the dopamine hit. But then once we get into our adult lives, especially, and we have families and we have work and we have the community and we have our friends and we have all these things that we have to do, all the obligations, it becomes really, really hard to make space for fascination because we have too much to
Mm,
do. I don't have time to be fascinated. I don't have time to slow down and really enjoy this meal or enjoy this conversation because I got this thing is due and my kids got to get to soccer practice. It's just not available. And so
mm,
this isn't about going out and finding something big and new and novel to be fascinated by. It's about how do we find fascination in the completely mundane things, right? And a really easy way to look at this is, if you eat at a Mexican restaurant, the Mexican food that you order is made with Mexican ingredients, right? Like they don't put French ingredients into a taco
Right.
salad at a Mexican restaurant. That's not how it works, right? So,
Right.
so the reason I say that is that the ingredients and the end dish, they have roots into each other. Okay. We have no idea, and science has their own ideas, and there are some really valid things there. But for the most part, we have no idea how we got here, right? We don't know. There's tons of planets out there. As far as we know,
Right.
we're the only one with
Right.
humans. It's pretty crazy. So I
Right.
think it's safe to say that us being here is kind of a miracle. Okay. So if we can agree that us being here is a miracle, right? Consider that the taco salad at the Mexican restaurant. Then shouldn't everything that occurs within the miracle be a miracle itself?
Yeah.
And now every single thing, the fact that we can
Yeah.
talk is a miracle. And I don't just mean talk like in geographic locations. I mean that I can create words that come out of my mouth and they hit your brain and you know what I mean. That's a miracle. And so
Yeah.
the more we can slow down and see that everything within this big miracle has to, by default, be a miracle, it's much easier to be fascinated.
I love that.
Well,
I love that.
that's a nice theory. Miracle inside the miracle. Wow. Cool. Speaking of fascination, yesterday I was fascinated to drive to Sedona, and on the way back, I was thinking, and I actually concluded that one of the biggest mistakes people make is that we are always blaming someone else for not doing what we expect of them. And even if they say they would do it, we always think they must. They just must do it because they said it. So I concluded that my view is that it's all on us. We don't genuinely want something if we are not doing it, and it will never become a priority for us.
Yeah.
And therefore, we can't expect others to fulfill our expectations. So, have you ever found yourself blaming someone else for not meeting your expectations?
So Vlad, I'm laughing for a very good reason. So for the first 30 years of my life, I had no exposure to personal growth. I was like, the total victim, the total, pointing the finger at everybody. I was the guy who would roll down the window and flip the middle finger at the guy who cuts me off in traffic. I had all this anger at everything. And I always said I had two mantras back then in that time of my life. Now, mantras now are like, I am limitless wealth and abundance. And especially if you come to
Right.
Southern California, you're going to hear mantras everywhere. You can't even order food at a restaurant without somebody asking you, what are you grateful for today? So there's mantras everywhere. My mantras back then, I had two mantras. Number one, that's just the way I am, right? Somebody would say, why do you get so angry? Hey, that's just the way I am. And my second mantra was, who can I blame? That was my mantra. Who can I blame? It was all about, it can't possibly be me. It's my idiot employees and my overly demanding boss and my moron clients and the weather in Orlando that was so hot I couldn't go outside and play, and so I became overweight, and my mom who didn't cook home cooked meals and bought us pizza and stuff all the time, and that's why I was fat. Like there was just no personal responsibility, because once I step into personal responsibility, now I actually have to do something about it. Now it literally is all on me. There's nobody coming to fix it. There's nobody coming to do anything. So the interesting thing about what you say is that I truly believe expectations are at the root of anger, of judgment, of resentment, of disappointment. It's all based on expectations. And so a lot of people say, okay, well then you're not supposed to have expectations of anybody. Then how do you get things done?
Yeah.
In my world, I have an amazing mentor in my life. His name is Steve Chandler. He's kind of the godfather of life coaching. He's 75 years old and will probably outlive all of us. Amazing guy. And he has this distinction he talks about, and it's expectations versus agreements. Okay. Expectations. Nobody loves expectations, right? Because what's the outcome of an expectation? Best case scenario, you do what I expected you to do. And what's my response? What do you want, a cookie? That's what you were supposed to do. Why would I care? Or you don't fulfill the expectation and now I'm upset. So best case scenario in an expectation situation is neutral. There's no happiness. There's no enthusiasm. There's no connection. There's nothing. Agreements, on the other hand, are a co-creation, right? In the way a guitar player and a singer-songwriter would sit down and write a piece of music together, they're not trying to pull one over on the other. They're not trying to abdicate responsibility so they can blame each other. They want to create a piece of music. And so they create the container that allows them to have that music. So I will set agreements with people and I say, hey, let's say it's somebody on my team. And I say, there's this thing that needs to be done by Friday. Is that something you can do? Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll get it done by Friday. Awesome. uh, what might get in the way of you doing that by Friday? No, everything's cool. I got it. Okay, cool. But if there were something that could get in the way of you getting it done by Friday, what might it be? Well, I mean, I have this meeting on Thursday, and I guess if it goes over, I may not be, and sometimes it does go over. So, oh, okay, cool. So, are you sure you can really truly make an agreement to have this done by Friday? They go, well, I could, but it's going to be tight. And so I say, cool. So what would allow that to be a firm agreement that you could have it done on Friday? Well, if I could move my Thursday meeting to Monday, that would make it super easy. Cool. Can we agree that you'll try to move that meeting to Monday so you can have this done by Friday? Absolutely. Cool. Now we have an agreement. Here's the beautiful thing. That's one thing. It's great. It takes a little more time on the front end, and people are like, oh, that's so much work. It's no less work than having to manage it not happening on the back end, right?
Right.
But here's the beauty of agreements. Let's say they don't get it done on Friday. They agree to get it done on Friday. They don't get it done on Friday. If we were in the land of expectations, I would say, Vlad, I can't believe this. You told me you'd have this done by Friday. You promised you'd have it done by Friday. You didn't have it done. What's going on here? And now Vlad feels terrible. He feels like a terrible employee, or he wants to fight back and say, screw you, boss. You put all this work on me and I'm only one person.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to win. With agreements, instead of managing the person, we manage the agreement. So I come back to Vlad and I say, Vlad, I'd like to revisit the agreement that we had that you would have this done on Friday. Looks like that agreement wasn't able to be fulfilled. And so I'm curious, what did we miss in creating that agreement that would have made it a higher likelihood you actually were able to complete it? Now we're managing the agreement itself, not the person, right? And so, of course, you don't do that ad nauseum. If over and over and over again, Vlad is not fulfilling his agreements, then you have a conversation that is about agreements in general. And you say, Vlad, I have this sense that when we make agreements, maybe they're not things you actually truly are committed to. Is that true for you? Or do you really want to commit to these agreements? And so at some point, you may have to let the person go. But the entire time, we're managing the agreement and not the person.
And what if they refuse to make an agreement?
Then they may not be the right person to work here, right? I mean, that's the thing. So if we have a culture, let's just say, and this is a completely wild example. If we have a culture, which, I mean, this should be all cultures. If we have a culture where we don't use racial slurs in our company, and somebody says, yeah, but I really like to use racial slurs, that's okay. You're not meant to work here. So if it can be that set and clear for something like that, it can be that set and clear for something like agreements.
All right. Okay, let's speak about your coaching sessions. So I bet you have some crazy story where even most seasoned therapists break a sweat. So is there a particular juicy story of coaching session gone wrong that you can share with us?
Coaching session gone wrong. I don't remember like having a coaching session and somebody saying like, I have this big dream, and me saying, go for your dream. And then I see them on the news, like breaking into somebody's house and stealing all their stuff. So we haven't had that happen. But the thing is that my coaching sessions, I would say, don't go wrong, because my entire approach to coaching and really to life is that we have to lighten up if we want to level up. Right. So my entire job in my mind is to help people understand that the more lightness they can cultivate in their lives, the more sincere they can be about what it is they want to create. Not serious, because serious feels very constricting and very, heavy. But if I can help them to be lighter, they'll go make the decisions they need to make. So I'm not telling people what they need to do. I'm not drill sergeant them and saying, if you wanted this, you would have done it by now, and you need to move your butt. And that just, for me, that doesn't work. For some people, maybe it does, but it doesn't work for me. So the juiciest thing that I can ever talk about is the fact that somebody comes into a session thinking that this is the most serious thing in the world and it's never going to be fixed. And they leave the session going, wait, I was stressed about what? I don't understand. Why did I think that was such a big deal? So that's my entire thing. I have a lot of fun stories, but none that have gone wrong. Knock on wood, Vlad. None that have gone wrong so far.
Vlad with the pessimistic approach over here.
Yeah. Not pessimistic. Some fun story, maybe. I don't know.
Well, here's a fun story. I'll give you a fun story. So, and it is appropriate for the conversation we're having. So I have another client in Hollywood. At one time was an A-list actress. She's now kind of transitioned more to directing and producing. And she had this movie that she wanted to make during COVID. And she's a big enough name that when she picks up the phone and calls somebody, they answer. And if she asks for money to finance a film, 9 times out of 10, she's going to get the money to finance the film. Well, she's calling around during COVID for this movie that she's really passionate about making. And she's telling them, like, we got this actor attached to the project and we're going to have this distribution. And we have all the metrics that would typically sell a movie. And all of the financiers are like, we're not doing it. We don't know if people are ever going to go back to the movies. This is before we had a vaccine. Like, we had no idea what's going to happen. And she couldn't get a penny for this movie. So she comes to one of our sessions, and this was a movie that was a love story that she was creating, right? It was a very like touching love story. And so we're talking, and she's telling me about this, and I said, okay, are you open to a different perspective on how to approach the investors? And she said, of course. And I said, this is what's happening right now during COVID, is that people have essentially run out of future. They have no idea what's going to happen in the future. We used to have plans and dreams and visions.
Yeah.
We've run out of that now. We have no idea if any of that stuff ever applies. And people are so used to right now watching the news and talking to their family and friends, and everybody's dealing in fear, and they're dealing in war, and they're dealing in scarcity, and they're dealing in terror, and they're dealing in all these terrible things. Tell these financiers that in a world where everybody's dealing in fear, they get to be somebody that starts to deal in hope, right? They can become hope dealers.
Yeah.
And she used that narrative and got $5 million the next week for the movie.
Wow.
And the reason I bring that up is because at our core, we want to bring good things into the world. We want to identify with people that are doing good, right? There's a guy, what's his name? Van Jones from CNN. Do you know Van Jones, the newscaster?
Yep.
I heard him on a podcast one day, and he was saying, people think we have an awful people problem, right? Like there's just so many awful people in the world. He said, we have an awesome people problem. There's a lot of awesome people. They just don't know what to do to help, right? And I truly believe that. I believe there's many more awesome people than there are awful people. So the more we can give ourselves and each other a chance to be a hope dealer in the world, to bring some goodness into this world, that filters out, man. It makes a huge difference.
Wow, I agree 100% with that, by the way. There are a lot of awesome people, much more awesome people out there. I want to talk briefly, Jason, about your book, Prison Break. I love it, by the way. I'd love for you to let our viewers know where to get that for free, because that's how I first of all, I was going to order on Amazon. I still will, but I kind of scrolled and you shouted out a link and you're like, oh, you can get my entire book for free. And I started reading it. I love it so far. So I know this book resonates with a lot of people. So I guess a couple of questions here, but number one, first, what inspired you to write this book? Why write a book, and what was that process like? Because writing a book, I imagine, it's an experience.
It is definitely an experience. What I wanted to do was, what I realized in my coaching was that a lot of people were coming to me with the same exact challenges that I had when I first started on this journey back when I was 29 years old. And this is when I had gotten to 330 pounds, and I was the director of engineering and operations for a tech firm. I was, late 20s, making well over six figures, had all the stuff that's supposed to make me happy, but at the same time was massively stressed, tons of anxiety, depression with medication for years and years, suicidal ideation, like all these things. And then, of course, being morbidly obese. And so I have the first chapter in the book. It's called The Day the Universe Cut Me Off, is kind of the day that I really had to realize I needed to take personal responsibility in my life and for my health and for my weight and everything else. And so many people seem to resonate with my story and that they experience the same thing, that I wanted to give people something that they could access, whether or not they ever coach with me. I don't want it to be only people that coach with me are the only ones who can get access to that kind of stuff. So I'm like, let's make it as accessible as possible. Plus, I wanted to document it for me. I wanted to be able to break down and deconstruct, coming from an IT background, we reverse engineer everything, right? I want to be able to put that in there so people can reverse engineer for themselves. And I wanted to do it in a way that was light and that was fun and that was memorable and had lots of stories and metaphors and distinctions. And so that was kind of why I wanted to write the book. And it was a lovely process. It actually it didn't feel like a hard process. It was effortful, but it didn't feel like a hard process. And I love it. I'm really grateful that I've been able to put it out and the reception it's gotten. And we'll definitely give you a link to get a free copy of the book. You guys can actually go to getprisonbreak.com/ArgoPrep, and it'll be a free version right there for you. You can get a free digital, audio, or paperback version. And I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, it's been great, man. It's just a great tool if you want to step out of the prisoner kind of victim mentality and into a self-leader mentality instead.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love it. And before I pass it on to Vlad for the next question, I want to talk briefly about. I don't have this on the questions, but I definitely want to touch upon it because we're
He's going off
huge
script,
fans.
Vlad. He's going off script.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the best. We typically don't stay on the script. It's just
No,
a
that's
kind of a
good.
guide there. But
Yeah.
we're of course a huge fan of Vishen. Vishen Lakiani. Quick funny story. Me and Vlad, I was 23 years old when we had the opportunity to take over a preschool that was miserably failing. Uh, the rent was $20,000 a month. The overhead at that time was $80,000 a month just to support the teachers and staff. And we came on. We took board. We have no money. I'm over here. I had a bunch of credit cards. We were maxing out credit cards, surviving. Those first 6 months were crazy. But I will tell you, for those 6 months, believe it or not, and Vlad's a huge fan of Vision. He introduced me to Vision. Is it 5 steps of? I'm sorry, Vlad, correct me. Is it 5 or 6 phases?
Six days.
Of, phases of meditation.
Yeah.
We would lie down in our classrooms on the bare floor every single day because we were there for 12 hours. And I kid you not, Vishen's meditation process, that video got us through because those were some very difficult times. I kind of
Wow.
wanted to share that. But with that being said, how's your experience with Mind Valley and AFest, right? I know he does. Is it 2 conferences every year?
Yeah, so well, there's even more now. So the two big ones are A-Fest, which actually is happening in a couple of weeks. I leave for Colombia next Thursday because we're doing it in
Wow.
Cartagena this year. So A-Fest is a 4-day long kind of festival that's every year. And then there's Mind Valley University that takes place in Tallinn, Estonia, and that's 3 weeks long in the summer. And then now they're doing these kind of 2-day like weekend events as well. So we just did one in Dubai in February. That was a 2-day thing. We had 2,000 people there. It was fantastic. But yeah, the events are incredible. Yeah.
And how long does it usually take you to prep for those? Because the thing I love about you is every time I see you and every time I see a video, it's something different. Not to knock on anyone else. I mean, they're incredible people, but every time when I'll look at the videos, it's always pretty much 98% the same content. But you tackle a lot of different topics. I mean, you have your core stories, but it's always different. So I kind of wanted to ask: it's every time it's a different scope or something like that?
Yeah, I try. It's probably not the most efficient thing to do, but I think my own need for novelty is that I get bored just giving the same kind of information all the
Fair
time.
enough.
And I'm also, so much of my content that I put out and that I share and that I write about comes from either my own life experience of what I'm trying to work through in my own life or what I'm doing with clients. And so, content is everywhere, right? If we're on the lookout for it, content is
Yeah.
everywhere. So
Yeah.
I like to have different messages, and yeah, at the prep time it depends. With Mind Valley is the only place that I host, that I MC. Usually I'm the keynote speaker for different conferences. But Mind Valley, I've been an author on their platform since 2014. I've done several courses with them. I'm filming a new one next month, and I've been a part of that community. But back in 2017, Vishen came to me and said, or 2016 rather, he came to me and said, "Would you be open to emceeing our live events?" Because he saw kind of how I interact with the audience. At one of the parties one night, he saw me freestyle rapping and having a whole crowd around me. And so Vishen loves anything that brings people together. So he's like, all right, if you can bring people together with rap, I'll put you on stage and have you host my event. And so I've been doing it ever since. I've been doing it since 2017 now with my co-host Mia, who's absolutely incredible as well. And so, so we have A-Fest coming up in another week and a half. And it's basically like TED-style talks during the day and kind of Burning Man style parties at night. And it's amazing. You guys have to come. You have to come out to one of these.
No, we
Anayat,
definitely. Yes.
we should have asked Jason to rep here. What are we doing here?
No, that was going to be my next question over here, which is actually, when did that skill come to be? When did you hone that? When did you find that passion? And I only say that, are you familiar with Harry Mack?
Of course, I'd love it. I'm using Harry Mack in my new keynote speech. I'm using videos of Harry Mack.
Wow. Yep. Okay, so I am obsessed with Harry Mack. I watched his videos when he was just barely known, and as soon as I saw him, and by the way, you are incredible. Also, I've seen a couple of the rap videos that's out there online. But yeah, please. When did you find that? When was that passion? How did you hone those skills for rapping?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a written guy. Harry Mack, his freestyle. I mean, he's next level. They're going to study his brain one day when he dies, and they're going to find out he's not of this planet anyways.
I
But for
agree.
me, I remember I was 13 years old, and I went to my neighbor Carlos's garage sale right across the street from me. And I went to his garage sale, and he had a little portable CD player that he was selling, like an old portable CD player for like, I don't know, it was like $15 or something. And he had a whole thing of CDs. And I begged my mom, and she bought me the little CD player. And she told me I could buy 2 CDs. The CDs were like, $2 a piece or whatever. And so I picked
Yeah.
up 2 CDs. We're talking like probably 1993, 1994. So I'm 13, 14 years old. The 2 CDs I picked up were Dr. Dre's The Chronic, which my mom probably shouldn't have let me buy that one. And then and the other one was DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Summertime, right?
Okay.
Couldn't have been more different, those 2
Yeah.
CDs, right? And so that's where I really just fell in love with hip hop. Like as soon as I started listening to it, and my mom listened to a lot of like soul and R&B when I was growing up. So I kind of always had that love for urban kind of music, or urban edge kind of music, urban leaning kind of music. And when I got the hip hop stuff, I was like, ooh, I like this. I ended up being an East Coast guy. I was not a West Coast guy. I was not a Tupac guy. I was a Nas guy first and foremost. Nas
Okay.
first, then Biggie, then Jay-Z.
Okay.
And I just got into it. And so then when I was 16, 17 years old, I started writing my own raps for the first time. And I actually remember being like 15 or 16. And I had gotten the Nas's second album. It was called It Was Written, was his second CD. And I remember my mom took me to a doctor's appointment with her. She's a single mother, only child. So it was always the 2 of us. And I'm in the waiting room while she's in the doctor's office. And I'm sitting there with the Nas CD. And when you open the CD, there's a little pamphlet inside. Anybody here who's under 35 years old has no idea what I'm talking about right now. And inside that pamphlet, it would actually have the lyrics to all the songs, right? I don't know if you guys remember this at all, but there were lyrics to the songs. And I remember sitting there as a teenager rewriting Nas's lyrics, not my own, just taking his and rewrite, because I wanted to feel what it would feel like to like be a rapper. Like, what does it feel like to write raps? And so I started with that. And then finally, when I was like 17, I started writing my own stuff. And then when I was 19, I ended up falling in with this group of guys who they were actually producing music, doing shows. I became a part of their group. And we became kind of the go-to rap group in Orlando, where I lived at the time, for any of the big artists that would come into town. So when, Twista would come into town, Busta Rhymes would come into town, Wu-Tang would come into town, and they would call us to open up for these artists. And
Wow.
so that's kind of how it all happened. And I've just had a love for hip hop ever since.
That's incredible. Now, I don't want to ask this because I feel like on every video you get asked. Well, every video that I've watched, you're performing something. Is it possible for a mini performance?
I have to stay in integrity, is that I typically say no to rapping on podcasts for the most part, unless it is figured out beforehand, because I try to keep it to be something special for when I do it live. But point people to some videos online, and they can watch the rap there.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. I love that. Okay, Vlad, I'll pass it over to you.
Could you please share with us, with our listeners, what habits can they adopt to have to maintain same positivity and mindset that you're using?
Yeah, man, there's so many, right? And I want to make it really clear too. And it's really important that I say this, because I think another thing in the personal growth world I'm not super thrilled with is that there almost becomes this belief that because you're watching, the personal growth people and all the content they're sharing and their positivity, that's just who they are by default all the time. And I can promise you can ask my girlfriend, my mom, all the people around me, I am definitely not positive all the time. To me, that's not the way the human experience works. The difference is that now it's the window of time from when I'm triggered to when I realize I'm living in this weird fantasy world that I've created and come back to center. That window keeps shrinking, right? And that's what transformation looks like to me. So first thing is, I just don't want anybody to have some unrealistic expectation that you somehow win personal growth by being positive all the time, right? That's not needed, and it would make you a very boring person anyways. But if we're talking about, tools to try to get us into a place where we have a clear mind, a calm mind, because I really truly believe a clear, calm mind is all we need to do anything that we need to do, right? It gives us such clarity. So my focus is always on how can I have a clear, calm mind? One of the ways I do this is I have this metaphor of a snow globe. You guys know these snow globes, you shake them up. It's like, the snow flying all over the inside of the globe. So when our minds get sped up, when we get overwhelmed, when we get frustrated, when there's just so much going on, it almost feels like we're standing inside of a snow globe that's been shaken up, and the snow is just flying all around us, and we can't even see our own hand in front of our face because there's so much going on. And we think, because we think we know everything as humans, we think it's our job to grab every piece of snow and put it back on the ground. And once I'm able to grab every piece of snow and put it back on the ground, then I can be peaceful. But what would actually happen if you really were doing that inside of a snow globe, running around, grabbing every piece of snow, is that as you're running around, your feet are kicking the snow back up that you just put on the ground. And so you never get to a place of calmness if you think your job is to do that. And so instead, if you have a globe that's been shaken up, the best thing to do, the only thing you need to do to have it calm down, is to just set it down and let it sit for 30 seconds or a minute, and all the snow will calm down back to the surface by itself. And so this is a visualization I use for myself all the time. If I get, again, in this really sped up place in my mind, I will close my eyes and I will picture a snow globe. I just did it the day before yesterday. I shake up the snow globe in my mind and I see the snow all flying around. And here's what I do. I pick one piece of snow that's flying around and I just watch it. I just observe it. And it's doing its thing. It's like, I'm not doing anything to it. It's swooshing around and it catches a little gust of water and kind of spins in a circle. And then it slowly starts going down to the surface, and then boom, it hits the ground. And then I pick another piece of snow and I watch that one. And that one's kind of going over here on the side and then goes back up and then swirls back around and then it hits the surface. And if I do that with 2 or 3 pieces of snow, my entire nervous system starts calming down. And nothing changed out there, but it all changed in here. And now I can go back into the world and actually do something with my life. So that's one. The snow globe metaphor for me is huge. Another thing that I like to do is, I don't know if you guys are you guys big Marvel fans? Do you guys like the Marvel movies and things like that?
I love Marvel. Yeah.
So to me, there's one Marvel character who is the most spiritually evolved of all the Marvel characters. Can you guess? Do you have a guess of who it might be?
I have no idea.
Doctor Strange.
I love it.
That's a great guess. That's a fantastic guess. Not the one I'm thinking of. Anybody else?
I don't know.
It's not Captain America.
It's not Captain America, no, but that's also a good one. Okay, so I'll give it to you. Here it is. The most spiritually evolved of all the Marvel characters is Deadpool. And I know anybody listening to this say, what are you talking about? Deadpool's the one that just kills everybody. He's just gratuitous violence. He's stabbing and he's shooting and he's crass and he's cursing and he's raunchy. How could he be the most spiritually evolved of all the Marvel characters? I'll tell you.
Right.
He's the only Marvel character that knows that he's in a comic book. He knows that none of it's real. That's why when you watch the movie Deadpool, he talks to the audience. He knows none of it's real.
The fourth wall.
He breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah.
He understands that the world that he's in is completely created by the fabrication of the mind, right? The mind is fabricating everything. Now, some people could see that and go, oh, well, if it's all made up, if it's not real, if you're in a comic book, then why do anything? Just sit on the couch and wait to die. Well, Deadpool doesn't do that. Deadpool says, I know I'm in a comic book, and since I'm here, I may as well play the game to the best of my ability. And so he goes out and he's very sincere about his work, and he's going to avenge the people that tried to kill his wife, and he's going to get the people that disfigured his face. He's very convicted about his values. He's very, very clear about what's important to him, but he doesn't take it that seriously. He doesn't take himself too seriously. So the more we can realize that, just like the not Batman thing, the more we can realize the entire world as we see it is objective, and then we layer a story on top of it. So if I can at any given moment, and this happened today, right? If I'm driving in traffic and somebody cuts me off, the objective thing that happened was that somebody went in front of me in traffic at a rate of speed that I was not expecting. That's the only thing that objectively happened. Anything else is a story. He shouldn't have done that. What a schmuck. What's wrong with him? Those are all stories laid on top, right? Deadpool doesn't worry about the stories laid on top because he knows it's all made up. So the less we can take all this stuff seriously, we still show up, we still do what needs to be done. If there's something we can do to help, if there's something we can do to be of service, we do that, but we don't take it too seriously. So that's the second mindset shift to play with.
Jason, I feel like I just got a free coaching session from you. It feels almost wrong, but I don't know. Let me share my experience. Forget about the Deadpool thing. That was incredible, but forget about that. Your snow globe reference, when you were tracing that back, I've never had this happen to me, but when you were closing your eyes and making that motion, I my entire nervous, I just calmed down. I've never felt that actually. So I was almost shaken up. That really spoke to. I don't know. I mean, maybe for. I mean, of course, we all speak to each other in different ways, but
Yeah.
wow, that was incredible. I mean, when you were
I'm
telling
so
that
happy.
story, or that I felt a huge sense of relief. I don't
Mm.
know if that's the right word I'm looking for. I have no idea, but when you were doing that, I felt overwhelmingly relieved. I felt calm. It's crazy. Wow, this is great. Great.
We will cut this part out. I'll put music on it and we'll send it to you. We'll use it as a meditation.
Perfect. There you go. That's amazing. I love that, man. Thank you for that reflection, though. I
No,
really
that
appreciate that.
no,
Thank you.
seriously, it's absolutely incredible. But Jason, I do want to ask you one last question, and thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time and being with us today. And this is a question that we like to ask every guest here. But who has been the most strongest or most inspiring person in your life, and what lessons have you learned from them?
Oof. I've really been blessed to have good people in my life that I'm just, yeah, I don't know what I did to deserve having these people in my life, but I don't want to question it. The person that comes to mind, though, is actually the guy that I mentioned earlier, Steve Chandler. And he is somebody who, he was the first one who really helped me to understand the role of personal responsibility, or the lack thereof in my life, was what was causing so much of my hardship. And I remember there are two things that come to mind that are, one in particular is the 10 the best coaching I've ever received in my life in 10 words. Okay, and I'll tell you that one in a second. The first thing, though, is I remember him telling me he went to a therapy group with this guy called Dr. Nathaniel Brandon. He wrote an amazing book called The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem. He's passed away a long time ago, but a really amazing psychotherapist. And it was a group session, and Steve goes in there and sits down, and Dr. Brandon goes up to the board and he writes on the board, "No one is coming." Right? He wants everybody to know no one's coming. No one's coming to make it easy for you. No one's going to come to fix it for you. It's all about personal responsibility. And somebody raises their hand in the room and says, "Yeah, but Dr. Brandon, you came." And Dr. Brandon says, "Well, I just came to tell you that no one is coming." And so I've always remembered that, one, because it's funny, but two, because it's the reminder of no one's coming. And that's great news. That's not sad news. That's great news. That means
Mm,
I actually have a level of influence and control over my experience of life. So that's one big one. But the second one, and literally, I tell this story to clients, the one I'm about to tell you, all the time, and they now repeat it back to me. They'll message me a question on WhatsApp, and before I can even respond, they'll answer it with what I'm about to tell you without me saying anything,
mm,
because it's so powerful. So 2014, 2015-ish, I was maybe a year or so into my coaching, and I was super stressed out. I was worried about the business, and I was going to make these investments in the business, and I was really scared about making those investments. And what if they don't work out? And I have this client who I think doesn't like the coaching, and I think they're going to cancel. And this other one who said they were going to sign up, and they didn't sign up. And I'm just freaking out. And I write this diatribe, this like 3-page long email to my coach, to Steve Chandler, with all this stuff, right? And I send it to him. I say, okay, he's going to shoot back some wisdom, and he's going to give me some strategies, and he's going to tell me how to get the person to sign up and how to make sure the
right.
investments work, all those things, right? He emails me back 10 minutes later, 10 words. That's all he has in the email, 10 words. "So much compassion for what you are putting yourself through."
Wow.
And it was this moment where I was like, he's right. I'm doing all of this to myself. This is completely self-created. And this
Mm,
notion of, he didn't say, "Stop beating yourself up, you stupid idiot." He said, "I have so much compassion for what you're putting yourself through." And what it spoke
mm,
to me, why it speaks to me so deeply, is because I don't offer myself that level of compassion enough. When all these things are, "Oh my God, but what about this? And what if this doesn't happen?" So much compassion for what I'm putting myself through in this moment. And that, again, calms my nervous system, brings me back down to reality instead of all these made up fabrications and imaginations of the terrible future where everything's going to be a catastrophe. It brings me
right.
back to the present moment. So those 10 words, I would get them tattooed on my arm if my girlfriend wouldn't probably break up with me. But those, to me, those are two of the biggest lessons I learned from Stephen.
Wow, Jason, thank you so much for sharing your stories, your journeys with us. I again, thank you for the free coaching session. I don't know about you, Vlad, but this is like a free coaching session, something far better than I can ask for. Jason, please, can you please let us know we can find more information about you, our listeners? Is it thejasongoldberg.com? Is that still the domain?
It is, yes. JasonGoldberg.com and Jason Goldberg on Instagram were taken. So I said, let me get the most pretentious sounding name possible. The Jason Goldberg. I'm thinking about changing it to a Jason Goldberg, just so I'm just one of the many Jason Goldberg. But for now, it's thejasongoldberg.com, the Jason Goldberg on Instagram. And my speaking stuff is on my website. My content's on Instagram. And that's the place to hang out and follow me.
Awesome. Jason, thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me.
This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning edtech company serving over 1 million students nationwide. We understand that as parents, you want to ensure that your child receives the best education possible. Say hello to ArgoPrep. With over 15 plus educational awards earned in just the past year, ArgoPrep's platform offers your child video lessons, quizzes, drills, printable worksheets, and more. Best of all, your ArgoPrep subscription comes included with 4 comprehensive digital workbooks that cover all 4 subjects: math, ELA, science, and social studies. Visit ArgoPrep.com today and start your free trial.